Irish or anything else. It is a tradition, a custom that comes from the English, and that's why we're talking about this militia. And then it was passed over with the Constitution to America.
Well, that's right, but every tribe that wants to survive is going to have a militia, aren't they? The Zulus, for example.
Yeah.
They actually, when the stage further, they had selective breeding. A warrior couldn't get married until he'd actually proved himself in battle. If you think of the Zulu, the film, the big ceremony in the kraal where they're all dancing, the women with short skirts and no tops and beards, that's what that was about. So, yes, it's everyone has a tradition, and we're no exception.
Yeah, okay. And again, so we're going to get into the detail of this, and I'm obviously going to allow you to go through it and explain what you understand about the militia. What I'm saying to people is the militia is completely separate from any government, right? So currently the situation that we've got in this country, meaning England, when I refer to a country, I mean England. Currently what we've got is that the militia has been entirely removed by the British for a reason, because the militias and the county militias, etc., were the people themselves that could stand up and, as the Magna Carta said, and take back control, right? It was a force for the realm, so tyranny could never get hold. And currently the situation is that one of the ways that the British government and the British Parliament have done this is to move what was the militia, in effect, into either what they used to term as the Old Guard, or then morphed into the Territorial Army, which is still under the control of the government and the Crown. And that's not how the militia should work. Am I correct in saying that?
Well, yes, there was a Militia Act in 1921 which finished the job, but all it did, in fact, was repeal Acts of Parliament related to the militia. It's a common law institution, it's a common law concept, it's part of our custom. Right. And at each coronation, the Queen, as you know, promises to rule according to laws, customs, and statutes agreed on, which means she can't give royal assent to a statute which would infringe the common law and custom.
Yep.
If she does, she hasn't, by Article 61, the last sentence, which says anything that's been done to the detriment of the subject's rights is void of no effect. So, I've had a number of people ask me if I can give legal advice. Well, the answer is, as a private person, you can't. What you can do is draw people's attention to sources of law, which you can then quote.
Yeah.
The subject's entitled to regulate his conduct according to the published law, and that's it. So, what I'll do, I've prepared quite a detailed document, which you've got, Graham, which you're going to put on your site. I'll draw people's attention to the issues in each paragraph, and they can read it at their leisure and get more detail. And I aim to keep my talk to about 20 minutes.
Yep.
Because that's the average person's attention span, isn't it? It's
yep.
not unreasonable. So by the end of this talk, you'll understand what happened to the militia and how it can be recovered, and the importance of the Lord Lieutenant, in actual fact, as the person who organises the militia, and the parish constable, who is makes sure that the militia is recruited, trained, and equipped.
Yeah.
And it's something that's been forgotten. It's not quite. It's outside living memory, but it's common law.
Wow.
So you'll find a document that Graham will publish on his page. It's the history of the English militia by John Hurst of the Magna Carta Society. I'll read the summary and then I'll go through the paragraphs.
Go on.
Service in the English militia is an ancient obligation of all able-bodied men. Taller than 5'4", as it happens, that's one of the quotes. It's the main reason why the loyal subject has the lawful obligation to provide and train himself with the weapons of the soldier of the day. The other reasons for being armed are law enforcement and self-defence. So, if you're able-bodied, you're in, basically, and there's no age limit, but I'll give details of what the different categories and the order in which they can be called out are further on. It was the duty of the parish constable to ensure that these obligations were complied with, the parish to keep a supply of ammunition and also a supply of weapons for those who couldn't afford them, and the Lord Lieutenant of each county to make arrangements for the militia to be properly officered and trained, together ready for service in an emergency. and those emergencies included riot, insurrection, and invasion.
Right.
So there you have it. The parish, as you say, Graham, the smallest unit in administration is the parish.
Yeah.
It's the parish that should care for the poor. It's the parish that should look to law enforcement and appoint the constable, and it's the parish that should run the militia.
Yeah.
All of that's been forgotten. Up and down the land, there are parish councils that are short of members. I understand it's quite easy to get onto a parish council.
Yeah.
And it's something I'd suggest we should all be doing to make sure these things are considered.
Yeah.
During my police service in the early 80s, when there was rioting up and down the land, it was seriously considered to appoint a large number of parish constables for the duration.
Yeah.
Not specials, parish constables.
Yeah.
That was last done in 1926 in the general strike.
All right.
It's a way of providing a large reserve of manpower.
Yeah.
They're each given a truncheon, or if they're in short supply, a chair leg apparently.
Yeah.
And they were ready to be used if need be. So
Okay.
if the local police look like they're being overwhelmed, the first line of defence is calling on parish constables.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's something that's been forgotten, but it's common sense in my opinion.
I agree entirely. And
Yeah.
remind me to come back to the Lord Lieutenant. Not yet. You carry on, and then.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the second paragraph is historical background. Our cousins in the common law countries often kept the customs and rights of Englishmen better than we have in England. So I've got an article by a Canadian about the early history of the Office of Constable.
Yeah.
And later on, I'm quoting an Australian source.
Right.
And then finally, I'm quoting an American Supreme Court judgment, the Heller case.
Right.
As you know, Supreme Court judgments should be binding in all the common law countries. So the Heller judgment is important. It went back to our militia and it confirmed our rights, not just Americans. So there we are.
Yeah.
That was in 2008. So the historical background is that able-bodied men were due to be required to do militia service, and it was the constable. And in the original term, the constable was the man who kept the castle.
Yeah.
As time went on, he became responsible for keeping the militia and armaments of the king, and those are the individual villages in a state of preparedness for the protection of the village communities throughout England.
Yeah.
So your modern statutory constable is in a direct line of descent from that, and I would say he has the same duties. The nearest I ever came to it was organising a naval watch. My members weren't armed, but they had walkie-talkie radios, and they knew how to use them. And it's a long tradition that really we should resurrect.
Yeah.
There's a concept of the watch. Able-bodied males for so many nights a year are expected to stand watch through the night, supervised by the constables.
Right.
And there are parts of our country where that's now necessary, I would say. So that's another tradition that needs to come back.
No, I agree entirely.
Talk about the Statute of Winchester, which was an early attempt to standardise what was done and delegate the number of constables in particular locations.
Right.
This system, the medieval system, persisted until the 19th century. And eventually you have the statutory constable, the Metropolitan Police being the first example. The watch and ward, also known as the parish watch, every system is compelled under penalty of law to serve as a volunteer night sentry or watchman a certain number of days a year. Refusing a high constable's call to report for watch and ward was punishable with fines and imprisonment, so they took it quite seriously.
Right.
Now we go to the legal background. As you know, Graham, I never give an opinion. I quote something.
Yeah.
It makes my documents long, but it makes them makes worthwhile. If somebody acts on the basis of information I can give them, it's no good saying John Hurst told me, but it will protect you to quote the actual document that John Hurst has drawn your attention to.
So let me just emphasise this to people, right? What John is saying to you, that within these documents, which are really important, don't just say John Hurst said this. What you're looking for are the paragraphs of law which are referred to by the court as authorities. So the authorities are being quoted, and the judge should look at it, and the barristers on both sides should look at the authority and say this is still valid.
Quite right, Graham. Thank you for that. That's the key to it. Now, if a constable or a barrister doesn't know it,
Yeah.
They're on the spot really, because they're in breach of Article 45 of Magna Carta, which says the Crown may have as servants constables, none but true men, and know the law and are minded to keep it well.
Right.
So you really put them on the spot, for a constable or a barrister or a lawyer or a magistrate not to know the law, it must make any decision they take suspect. In fact, it makes it invalid, because if you put forward a legal argument and the other side doesn't know the law, because the assumption is a court will know the law, and it transpires that the officials who are running the court don't know the law, then they're out of a job, and any decision they made is void.
Well, let me just say this to you briefly, without taking this too far. There is a video online. I'm now going to go and download it after this show, and it is a Supreme Court justice in this country, and I believe his name is Phillips, and he explains how he became a Supreme Court justice, and he actually told the person who was appointing him, I don't know anything about common law, and the guy said, don't worry, you'll soon pick it up.
Well, that's the omission. There's a document of which I've done, Graham, you've got a copy of, like my affidavit on my experiences in legal land.
Yeah.
I suggest you put that up as well. I've been involved in legal land for 45 years now, and I knew about the Constitution and the Bill of Rights from my territorial army service.
Yeah.
The soldiers are taught it, and then when I become a policeman, I find that I'm the only one.
Yeah.
The test that we discussed is, if you say to a lawyer or a Crown official of any sort, really, can you quote the coronation oath?
Yeah.
And of course, if they can't, how do they know they're complying with it?
No, I agree entirely.
It's simple, isn't it?
Well, yeah, and again, proof's in the pudding. When I was in the nastiest magistrates in the country, the number one magistrates in this country, Westminster magistrates, I held up the coronation oath. They said, what do you rely on for your defence? And I held up the Coronation Oath Act of 1688 and the Bill of Rights of 1688. And then the Crown offered no evidence.
Okay, yes, Graham, that's excellent. I've got a quote from Harrisbury's Laws of England in this document, which is the top of the tree legal textbook, covers constitutional law, and it's binding on all the lower courts. There is a chapter in the constitutional law section. There's a paragraph on martial law.
Yeah.
And I'll quickly summarise it. When there exists a state of actual war, of insurrection, riot or rebellion amounting to war, the Crown and officers may use the amount of force necessary in the circumstances to restore order. Now, actually, the definition of war is when the courts aren't able to sit.
Right.
So you could argue we're nearly there with COVID, aren't we?
Well, I agree. And at the moment, they're causing massive problems with the courts.
Yeah. It's not a violent insurrection, but it is an insurrection to shut down the courts.
Yeah.
Whether this power of using the extraordinary measure is really a Crown prerogative, or it's merely an example of the common law right of duty of all ruler and subject alike to use the amount of force necessary to suppress disorder, is not quite free from doubt. So here we've got Harrisbury's confirming the common law right of duty of all ruler and subject to use the amount of force necessary to suppress disorder, and that's it. And when you look at a legal judgment or a textbook, you're looking for the legal principle within it. The result is important, but more important is how it was arrived at. So we've got the common law right and duty of all subjects alike. In the extract from Pinney, there's a reference, and it refers to a case of Pinney, 1832. So I've looked up Pinney, and there's a quote from Dicey. Now, we all know Professor A.V. Dicey, don't we? The Victorian professor who was very dodgy. That's where the term Dicey comes from, I understand. And he was one of the first proponents of the Parliament could do what the hell it likes in his early work, but he changed his mind later.
Yeah, he did. He did.
Yeah.
And they never refer to that.
No. An MP will say Parliament can execute all blue-eyed baby boys.
Yeah.
And Dicey said, well, no, you can't. And actually, Dicey also acknowledged the right to rebel.
Yeah.
There we go. So there's a quote from Dicey, and it emphasised the fact that if there's a riot, the loyal citizen's got a duty to stop it.
Yeah.
And he can get trouble if he doesn't. So there we are. Next reference is Wikipedia. I'm always careful about Wikipedia, and I check the sources, but I'm happy with the ones I'm quoting here. The control of the militia, which you talked about, Graham, was also important.
Yeah.
So there's a Wikipedia article, and here's what part of it says. In the midst of the English Civil War, there was some debate as to whether militia should be a supplement or an alternative to a standing army.
Yeah.
And a series of ordinances were passed in attempts to replace the repealed 1588 Act. What an ordinance is an order of the king, an order in council, and it's a lesser form of law. It doesn't beat an act.
Yep.
And it doesn't repeal the common law,
right.
because it was made as an exercise of the common law. Those reflected the ongoing struggle for control of the militia until in the early 1660s, new legislation allowed the militia under the control through the lieutenancy of the gentry. And that's the concept. So the Lord Lieutenant recruits members of the gentry, and they officer the militia. Now, earlier you referred to the concept of the militia, if it feels the need, can reject the authority of those officers under Article 61.
Yep.
But the concept is the lieutenancy, the Queen's personal representative, or the sovereign's personal representative of the county, appoints members of the gentry. So not politicians necessarily, as in the modern sense. People from good families, people that can be trusted.
Yeah.
And it's a protection against what's called a select militia. If the powers that be got away with having a small select militia, that would become oppressive in its own right because it wouldn't reflect the majority of the population.
Right.
And that's why the militia should be an institution that's throughout society, not just to a select few. One of the concepts in the militia is in fact the trained bands, and trained bands are good in the sense they get more training, but they're a risk in the sense that they could become political. And in fact, you could argue that the history of the Civil War is that the Puritans did just that.
Yeah.
The New Model Army was founded on money borrowed from Jews in Antwerp, and quickly saw off the ordinary militia.
Yeah.
And that's something we don't want to happen. Then we go on to the Bill of Rights. As you know, the Bill of Rights is a peace treaty. The actual form of the peace treaty is the Declaration, and the bill was named by an Act of Parliament.
Yeah.
When you read the Bill of Rights, you need to read the whole thing, and you read the heads of grievance, the complaints with the Stuart kings, and the subjects' rights, and they match each other.
Yeah.
And there are two heads of grievance and two subjects' rights that are relevant to militia duty. First one is the grievance standing army. This is what the Stuart kings did. By raising and keeping a standing army within this kingdom in time of peace without consent of Parliament and quartering soldiers contrary to law. So what that means is that the Stuart kings, they had guards. The reason the oldest regiments in the army are guards is because they were guards. They were essentially private security for the king.
Yeah.
The Stuart kings pushed the envelope and recruited a standing army, and they had the cheek to tax the people to run it. That's what quartering soldiers means. Soldiers would live in people's houses and eat all their food, and interfere with their daughters and that sort of thing. The second grievance is disarming Protestants by causing several good subjects, being Protestants, to be disarmed at the same time when papists were both armed and employed contrary to law. So the subject's right to remedy this is that the raising or keeping of a standing army within the kingdom in time of peace, unless it be with consent of Parliament, is against the law. Now, one of the interlocking side effects of that is that the army is subject to being renewed every year. There has to be a Parliament every year, otherwise the army becomes a mutiny.
Yep.
So the two interlink. And the second remedy is that the subjects which are Protestants may have arms for their defence suitable to their conditions and as allowed by law. So if Protestants get their arms back, then everyone's got them.
Yeah.
And suitable to their conditions means modern weapons.
Yep.
Not World War II era as we've got now. It should be modern weapons.
Yep.
And the weapons of the common soldier. Now this is where we go on to our cousins in the United States that kept their rights better than we did. The Second Amendment to the United States Constitution, which is well known, isn't it?
Yeah.
The right of the subject to bear arms. shall not be infringed is based on these concepts. Here's what was quoted in the Heller judgment in 2008. The Second Amendment, United States, was based partially on the right to keep and bear arms in English common law and was influenced by the English Bill of Rights of 1689. So William Blackstone described this right as an auxiliary right supporting the natural rights of self-defence and resistance to oppression and the civic duty to act in concert in defence of this state. So that's important, the natural rights of self-defence and resistance to oppression.
Yeah, no.
And the civic duty to act in concert in
defence of the
so
state.
That's important.
So there's the two elements there, which is the civic duty to act in concert in defence. So, for example, the National Rifle Association in this country has a royal warrant from...
It's a charter, actually, Graham. It's one step stronger. It's a charter.
Yeah, the charter, royal charter from Queen Victoria, and it mentions why it's there, and it is about defending the realm. But the other element of there that is very clear, so if anyone says, these people in America pop up and go, you don't need AR-15s to go hunting, etc. Well, an AR-15 is an Armalite rifle, 15 rounds in a mag. Yeah, they are semi-auto. They're not autos. And they're not assault rifles. And
well, I say, Graham, actually, it's the weapons of the common soldiers, so that means a full auto. So it'll be an M16.
Well, I don't mind, John.
Don't be distracted. It's the weapons of the soldier.
Right.
You wouldn't handicap a soldier by giving him a bow and arrow, would you?
No, you wouldn't.
Yeah. So it might be your son.
Yeah. So the key word there, though, is you are allowed to have firearms to prevent oppression.
Yeah.
By the government or anyone else. That's it.
Yep. Yeah. Let's imagine you're a shopkeeper and you're subject to a protection racket.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, got you.
Right there, and there's a quote: District of Columbia versus Heller, and as we've said before, Supreme Court judgments in the common law countries should be binding in the others. And it also it mentions the select. There's a warning against the select militia, which would allow one political faction to oppress others. We don't want that. Now here's another thing. My friend Mike Burke's done this research. I was hoping he was going to come on, but he's too shy. You can hear me, Mike. He's taller than me, but he stays in his cocoon and won't come out. We will do one day. It should be noted that the routine arming of constables is prohibited because they will be a standing army that the Parliament not authorised.
Yeah.
You recall I mentioned last week that when the Metropolitan Police Act 1929 has been debated in Parliament, there's consensus. Yeah, you have a police force, but they're not going to be standing armies. They're going to have a certain number of Royal Naval surplus cutlasses and pistols, and they'll be kept in police stations and issued as required and then given back.
Yeah.
Now, the research that Mike Burke has done leads him to believe that police inspectors and above are automatically officers of the militia, and as such can authorise constables to be armed when necessary for specific incidents.
Right.
And that's a way that police forces get round the Bill of Rights prohibition on standing armies, because a militia is an army, but it's not standing; it's part-time.
Yeah.
Now, one of the difficulties we have for researching that is Mike's done his best to get Hansard for the debates on the Metropolitan Police Act 1829, and they're basically not available. There's about 18 months worth of Hansard can't be found. Now, whether it's been destroyed in bombing or been eaten by mice or whatever, we don't know. But we really would like to see that, if anyone can offer any suggestions.
Well, what were the dates? Or you send me an email with the dates, and I'll go up there.
Oh, okay. Well, that excellent. 1829. There we are. I'll do that, Graham. Thank you. There's a difference between doing it on the phone and doing it in person, isn't it?
Yeah.
The reason John Bingley went up to Parliament is because we couldn't find the Declaration of Rights. The text of it was unavailable. It was an absolute outrage.
Yeah.
He had to do it because I was a serving constable at the time, and I've been told not to get involved in politics. So John did it.
Okay.
Now we're going to talk about point 4, Graham. A high point in the militia was arguably the Militia Act of 1802. This, I suggest, is a model for what we should aim to recreate.
Yep.
To summarise, each county's Lord Lieutenant would set the amount of militiamen to be raised from the various areas of their county. for example, by dividing it into hundreds, and parish constables will draw up lists of all eligible men between 18 and 45. So there is a tight age limit. I'm well over it then, 45. So here's the categories, just for those that are listening. First to be called up, under 30, no children. Second to be called up, over 30, no children. Next, all men, no living children under 14. Next, all men, one child under 14. And finally, if it's all gone pear-shaped, all other men.
Yeah.
Men were to be drawn from the classes in order, but there were exemptions, and a wide range of men were exempt. Most obviously officers and men of the Army, Navy and Marines, but also peers of the realm, clergymen, teachers, university students, constables, sailors, apprentices, or men working in royal arsenals or dockyards. A poor man, defined as one with assets of less than £100 with more than one legitimate child, was exempt, as was any poor man physically unfit for service, or any man at all less than 5 feet tall, 5'4" tall. There we go. And that's a Wikipedia article on the Militia Act 1802, which is well worth reading. 120 odd years later, nearly, the Territorial Army and Militia Act 1921 repealed it all. But as you know, when an Act of Parliament is, that gives effect to a common law rule is repealed, the common law returns with full force.
Yeah.
So we're still in play. We're entitled to have a militia.
Yeah, no, I agree entirely. That's an important point you've got up there. It's important to note that the City of London has retained its militia to the present day.
If you look on the legislation.gov.uk website, you'll find there are three acts relating to militia. It talks about what's now known as the Honourable Artillery Company. Yeah. It's the only bit of grass in the City of London. It's the rugby pitch, but in an emergency they put tents on there. The underground bombing in 2007, an emergency mortuary was on there. I went up there as a policeman. They've kept it better than us, Graham.
Well, and again, go back to the Magna Carta and what it actually said. It wasn't just the City of London that had special rights and privileges. It was every city and town in England.
Yeah, indeed, yeah. As you know, I'm doing some research about Hull. Hull is an early beneficiary of Royal Charters. Yeah. And I'm coming to the conclusion that the fishing limit, the 6 mile limit, the 12 mile limit, and even the 200 mile limit are covered by charters. Right. So if the EU wants to take the mickey and continue to fish in our waters, we can invoke that. I'm coming to the conclusion.
Good.
If Mr. Johnson is weak enough to let them continue, then something should be done about it.
I agree.
There we go.
Go on.
So to summarise, here's a judgment which I'll read. This is a judge speaking, the Recorder of London, one of the senior judges in London. The right of His Majesty's subjects to have arms for their own defence and to use them for lawful purposes, such as hunting, is most clear and undeniable. It seems indeed to be considered by the ancient laws of the kingdom as not only a right but as a duty, and that this right, which every subject most unquestionably possesses individually, may, and in most cases must, be exercised collectively. It's likewise a point which I conceive to be most clearly established. It seems to follow of necessary consequence that it cannot be unlawful to learn to use them for such lawful purposes with safety and effect, for it would be too gross an absurdity to allege that it's not lawful to be instructed in the use of anything which is lawful to use. Lawful purposes for which such arms may be used, besides immediate self-defence, are the suppression of violent and felonious breaches of the peace, the assistance of the civil magistrates in the execution of the laws, and the defence of the kingdom against foreign invaders, to strengthen the civil power and to keep themselves at all times prepared for a vigorous and effectual discharge of their duties as citizens, are in my view sufficient visible and legal objects for the continuation of the London Association. The Recorder of London 1705, and there's a reference from a textbook. So you need to know what the London Association is, don't you?
Yeah.
So so I found this in a obituary. So it's an obituary of Sir James Sanderson, Lord Mayor, 1792 to 3. He played a major role as chairman of the London Association for aiding the civil powers in suppressing seditious meetings, which he received his baronetcy. He was very active in preparing the city for possible invasion following the declaration of war by France on the 1st of February 1793, promoting the Volunteer Corps Act and the City Militia Act. He was founder of the Revolution Society, an organisation established to celebrate anniversaries of the 1688 Revolution. So there we are, that's the London Association. Now, the descendants of the London Association is, as you mentioned earlier, Graham, the National Rifle Association, and they've got a Royal Charter. I have to say that the leadership of the NRA is typically stuffed with Freemasons, and they're not all. They're typically quite snooty, and they certainly look down on the likes of us.
Us, yeah.
But they're elected, so if enough people join the NRA, and you can go to the website, you can get the training. You can go to the ranges of Bisley, and they'll lend you the weapons of practice, and eventually we can overthrow them. As Mike Burts knows, in 1997, members of the NRA really put their foot down over the Bill of Rights and wanted the NRA to become active politically and legally, and they didn't.
Yeah.
They didn't. They rolled over and said, "Okay, we can make do with our World War II single shots, and never mind the Constitution." But in actual fact, it's contrary to their charter.
Yep.
If I know now what I know then, and I wasn't serving policeman at the time, I would have done something about it. But there we are. So that's the document. So by the time you've read it, you'll have an understanding. Quickly talk about the Lord Lieutenancy. I've looked at Lord Lieutenant Kent, for example, which is where Dover is.
Yeah.
It's a lady. She's a titled lady, lives on a farm.
Right.
She's the Queen's personal representative. She's got a responsibility for the army, both serving and retired.
Yep.
What she knows about the army is not specified. I would say, in the same way as no woman can be a constable because they don't have a common law obligation to maintain the peace, I'm wondering whether a Lord Lieutenant can be a woman. I don't want to prejudge the lady. I don't know what her antecedents are. She might come from a military family. Apparently, other relatives have been Lord Lieutenants. Apparently, there were 70 sub-Lord Lieutenants or Deputy Lord Lieutenants in the county. Surely there must be some soldiers amongst them. And I think I'll do some more research and report on it. And I think the people we need to petition really are these Lord Lieutenants, because they've got the responsibility for the militia and they've given it up. And they should never have done. And they're also responsible for old soldiers in their territory. And of course, we know the plight of veterans, don't we?
We do indeed. And I'm really pleased that you've brought that up, because I've done a lot of research previously into the Lord Lieutenants. They are described now as ceremonial.
Yeah.
But they're not. They are key to the militia. And you can almost see what the British have done to, again, subvert the militia. Anyone who's just read through this essay will understand these are all literally authorities that you can rely on. And I think it's very important that people understand that. But again, when you look at everything that they're doing, it refers back, and you can see the dismantling over time of every one of our rights to pull it away, so the people of England are disarmed, can't organise, and these laws are being used to oppress, and oppression is a key word in these documents, the citizens or subjects of the realm of England.
Yes, Graham, it's funny how it comes together, isn't it? If two people do research, that's called peer review, isn't it? And it's the way you test ideas. So
yeah,
that's pretty well, working pretty well, isn't it?
Yeah, no, that's bang on the money. You've definitely done a very good job there, even if I say so myself. Hang on a minute, let me just see if there's any questions from...
on the subject of questions, could I suggest, Graham, when you put the video up, the YouTube replies is a good place to answer, isn't it? Because more people can see it. You've got loads of subscribers, haven't you? So.
Oh right, yeah. No, that's not.
See your YouTube.
So you're saying, yeah, so if you can put any questions in the comment section of the video, yeah, which is going to be below this, and that's really good because it means me and John can have a look at it. And you can ask John questions, you can ask me questions, and John will answer those questions. He'll come on. He's also a mod on the channel, so he'll be able to get access to it to give you, proper answers. But John, thank you very much for that.
Well, we kept the time down, Graham. A bit who are getting on. So 40 minutes. That's good for us, isn't it?
No, it is very good. Very, very good. So again, I'm going to emphasise a couple of quick things here. The major points that we're coming out with, it is completely lawful to own firearms in England if you are an Englishman and a Protestant, basically. But anyway,
all nationalities, of course. Protestants are getting them back, so everyone's got them.
Yeah.
Mike Burke has just sent me a reference to his case where this was tested. I think we need to get him on to be interviewed at some point.
Yeah.
It goes like this. Let's imagine you're a fit person. You're not mad or bad. And you apply for a firearms certificate from a chief constable.
Yeah.
The first problem you have is you find that most police forces shut down their firearms certification departments at the beginning of COVID. And I find that very suspicious. Where I am in South Wales, the constabulary hasn't issued shotgun certificates since March, and the local gun shops are upset because they can't get customers. As far as shotgun certificates are concerned, there's no good reason requirement.
Yep.
You've got an absolute right to have a shotgun certificate just because you want one.
Yeah.
And it's very easy to have a good reason because there are commercial clay pigeon ranges all over the place, and you turn up with your shotgun, pay for the cartridge in the place, and off you go.
Yeah.
You don't need to own any land. You don't need to have permission of an landowner. Firearms, it's different. You have to be a member of a club or have land to shoot on and permission from the owner.
Yeah.
Or self-defence. Now, what would be the legal position of somebody that had applied for a firearms certificate, put forward self-defence as a good reason and hadn't got it?
Yeah.
Well, the position would be that if they subsequently bought one from a man in a pub, they'd have to call the chief constable and the Home Secretary responsible for the order for the policy to come to court to justify their actions.
Yeah.
Because a fit person has been denied a certificate, and whose fault is it? Well, it's these corrupt politicians and policemen.
Yeah.
That did it. Nobody's done that yet. The reason is those of us who in the firearms community know about this, know that we lose our certificate on some pretext. If we tried, it needs somebody who hasn't got a certificate to push the envelope.
I'll totally agree.
Yeah.
And someone of good character, never been in trouble with the police.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is a situation. So they literally say, I mean, describe the scenario.
It goes like this: if there's an act of Parliament or a Declaration of Rights that says you can have arms for defence, when the Chief Constable is making a decision, the way it was done is this: all Firearms Acts amendment. The first Firearms Act is 1920. Subsequent acts are amendments. You remember I quoted Mr. Short with 2 T's, the Home Secretary.
Yeah.
Lieutenant Commander Kenworthy says to him, "Is self-defence a good reason for issuing a certificate?" And Mr. Short says, "Oh yes, of course it is." Because later acts are amendments to that act, that conversation is what Parliament intended. You can have a gun for defence. That existed until 1969, no problem at all. And then the Home Office issued a policy. What the Home Office did in the 1960s was 2 things. One is they reorganised police forces. There were 243 odd police forces, and they reduced them down to 43.
Yeah.
Now, in country districts, the chief constable would never have been a constable. He would be somebody like a retired senior civil servant or a retired businessman. He represent the county, the people of the county, and he would keep a check on the constables to make sure they didn't oppress the people.
Yep.
bit of a recipe for corruption, possibly. You know, he gets stopped somebody from drink driving, and he says, "I know the chief constable."
Yeah.
But the principle was sound. From 1964 or thereabouts, police forces were amalgamated, and the chief constable had to have been a constable and on a list approved by the Home Office.
Right.
The Home Office then films a staff college at a manor house at Bramshill near Bracknell.
Yep.
And that college, I kid you not, in its later days, the commandant was a former East German Stasi official. I'm not joking.
Right.
Who is largely responsible for what the present state of the police forces is. Ever since the mid 1990s, they've been subverted. And the second thing the Home Office did is there was a very small Firearms Act in 1965. The criteria for issue of a firearms certificate were a person has got to have a good reason, and it was changed to got to have a good reason in the opinion of a chief constable. You see the difference?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how they did it. So a chief constable's got to be satisfied and have a good reason. And then after a couple of years later, it's 1969, and the Home Office issue their infamous memorandum saying to chief constables, "Don't you dare accept self-defence as a good reason. You won't get any promotion. You can be promoted from chief constable to a body called the Inspector of Constabulary, for example, or made a lord and what have you." And so it's a recipe for corruption, and it is corrupt, and it's the reason we have the highest rate of violent crime that we've ever had.
I agree.
And it's all because, yeah. So that's it. 40 minutes, up to 45 minutes, Graham.
Well done. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And again, we'll do another show next week. There's still people referring back to Article 61.
I've been asked, several people have asked me that, Graham. So can I nominate Article 61 and lawful rebellion? It'll be the truth about lawful rebellion.
Yeah.
And I've got to tell you, the original source is Mike Burke and I on the Magna Carta Society.
Yeah.
And it's been corrupted and subverted and garbled and mixed up.
I agree entirely.
Yeah. So not being big-headed, but if you want the original source, and we know we're right because we went and saw a QC. We did the research, wrote the paper, saw the QC. He said, "Quite right, chaps."
And it was in the Telegraph, and they said,
"Yeah, that's right.
This is right." Yeah.
And specifically, I see no justification for saying you can ignore an act of Parliament.
Yep.
I don't think you can. And that is the thing. But you can ignore an act of Parliament that isn't an act of Parliament because it goes against the common law. But that's a completely different thing.
You can't. So let me just get this right before we go close this down. In the Bill of Rights, it states that they have no longer got a pretended power to
suspend the laws or the effects of laws.
That's it, right? So, and there was two elements to that. One sounded like saying you can't go retrospective. So if something bad happened a year ago, they can't then say, that we've just scrubbed that law, right? So
and the Stuart Kings had divine right of kings, so that's what the suspending power is. I don't like that one. I just refer you to Article 13 of the Bill of Rights, the last article. Parliament exists to amend, strengthen, and preserve the laws.
Yeah.
And that's it. So amend means improve, strengthen, and preserve. And there's no remit for Parliament to infringe the laws and customs.
No, none whatsoever.
Yeah. And of course they do. They say we can cut off, we can kill blue-eyed boys if they want to.
We can do what we like.
Yeah. So if we agree, then it'll be the truth about lawful rebellion. I've got a back catalogue of videos and things, Graham, that with the assistance of UK Column and the British Constitution Group I've made. Sometimes they're hard to find. I'll send you a list if you can post it on your website.
Yeah.
And I've talked about this topic before. As I say, I'll undertake to answer any questions that people have in the
comment section. Okay.
Until we get kicked off YouTube, anyway.
Spot on. Thank you very much, John, for coming on.
Just doing my bit. Yeah.
Well done.
You're like me. We can't help ourselves, can we?
No, well, again, we got to be out there. Someone's got to do it. So well done. Thank you very much. And please ask Mike to come on the show. If he doesn't actually want to show his face, what we do, and there are genuine reasons why people don't want to do that. He can speak on the show, and we'll just have a picture of whatever he decides a picture he wants to put up.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Graham. See you next week.
Okay. Bye bye.
Bye.
So there you go. They are John Hurst again. Right. He's such a fantastic researcher, and he's been doing this for so long. You know, to be an ex-police officer as well, or a veteran police officer, what you want to describe it as, involved with firearms as well, etc. Metropolitan Police. He absolutely detests what they've become, and I know that there are many other veteran police officers, veteran soldiers that all feel the same way, you know, and we're not doing anything wrong. So that document's going to be posted up. The one from last week should already be up there. If it's not, I'm going to start putting up the series there and making sure everyone gets it. What I'm going to do now is say au revoir, tiddly poo, love you all, don't forget what I believe in. The Constitution is the solution. I am very grateful for all the donations that have come in. That's what's, you know, literally keeping me alive at the moment. We've got the 7th of November in Hull City Centre, Queen Victoria Square, where we're now going to do the petition, etc., to Parliament. I can say to everybody, it's going to be a good day. We know that President Trump is going to win, but we need to make sure everyone in America goes out there and votes for him. Caustic, I'll be ringing you a little bit later. I'm going to pop out for something to eat. I'm starving. And then I'm going to come back to that. So I'm just going to say to everyone, again, thank you for watching the show. Thank you for sharing. Sharing is caring. You're all great people. And again, there's one more of these left. And there's not going to be many after that. And by the way, there's a couple of people that I'm speaking to about. We are doing more of these, but they take a long time to make. So there is one left, and there it is. Just look at that; it's all carved, right? So as my finger goes inside there, you can see this is all carved, yeah. And this is oak. No loss, no harm, no injury, no fraud. And there it says it on there. England, I want my country back. It's absolutely gorgeous. There is one left. Right, so again, they're on the website, and obviously the cups, mugs, etc. There's some other stuff that we're going to be putting up there, and we're going to keep pushing this forward. Don't forget, we've also got the press passes now, so YouTubers, people telling the truth about England. There are some other things in the background that's going on. Again, a massive, massive, massive thank you to supervillain Jim Cooper for making that. That's going to be the intro now to the show. And again, what I'm going to do is finish on the shorter one. Hopefully, it's going to come up on this screen. Touch wood. Let's see what happens, if it does or it doesn't. Let me see if I can pull that out. Hopefully, this is going to work. Bye. I bet that didn't work. Let's see if this works.